Hey guys, Aaron here with another fountain pen video. And today I want to talk about the Parker Vacumatic. And the pen that you see in front of you is one of, I have three Vacumatics, but I have, I think, six vacuum fillers. This one's neither my first one or my last one. It's just one that I have inked up right now, and I really enjoy vacuum fillers, so I thought it would be a cool pen to review. Now, in order to do so, I would like to, of course, talk a little bit about the history of Vacumatics and go all the way back to 1932, actually August of 1932, and Parker actually decided to test market a fountain pen called the Golden Arrow. And this new pen actually featured a plunger filling system that nestled at the back end of the barrel, eliminating the space and need for a pressure bar and sack. Now, what that allowed for a much greater ink capacity in the pen, because you're not having to worry about a pressure bar or a sack, so to speak. So you're literally using the barrel for your ink capacity. It's not an eyedropper, it's a vacuum filler. So you're able to pull in a much larger quantity of ink, so it gives the user not only more ink capacity, but with their new design, they offered this in a clear or somewhat transparent barrel that also allowed the user to see how much ink remained in the barrel. Now, they weren't the first pen company to offer some type of ink window, so to speak. Schaefer had marketed an ink window as well. I know there was probably some other pen companies out there, but they weren't as successful with that. Now, one interesting note is that Parker Company actually did not design the filling system. They actually bought the rights to the design. A gentleman or a professor by the name of Arthur Dahlberg applied for a patent in 1928. And he was an instructor in machine design at the University of Wisconsin. And he had actually spent some time perfecting what we know now as the vacuum filler or the pump filler. Now, although he had basically created, so to speak, this design, it was not entirely original. He actually utilized two other designs to create this, and part of it was an extension of Huston Taylor's 1905 bulb filler patent, and it also used some portions of Charles Dunn's 1920 pump filler patent. So again, I thought it was really interesting that, he was able to create this patent. I thought it was utilizing past designs. And then I thought it was really smart on Parker's part, obviously, to buy the rights to the design. They obviously saw something in it, realized there's something that they could utilize and market, and really the rest is obviously history. Now, the other thing they launched with this pen is that it was obviously an Art Deco design, but it was highlighted by a stylish new arrow-shaped clip. This clip was designed by Joseph Platt. And now we know this clip as the arrow clip, or people call it the Parker clip. But so not only did they launch the pen with a transparent barrel, a beautiful, beautiful materials, obviously, a brand new filling system allowing much greater ink capacity, you get a really interesting clip design as well. So, they had so many things going for this pen. Now, it's not called a Vacumatic yet, so bear that in mind. And the pen at the time when it was initially test marketed and everything, it was actually offered in a colored and clear version, but also a colored and black version, meaning the barrel did not have transparency to it. So the users had the option of buying either or. And then there was some speculations on why they changed the name from Golden Arrow. Part of it was that some people had thought that they actually encountered some legal difficulties due to the fact that there was already a pen on the market that had that name. It was actually a British pen that actually already bore the name Golden Arrow. And then some people speculated it was because Parker wanted to emphasize the advantage of the new filling system. Either way, the name was changed to vacuum filler. And when they launched the pen in 1933, the pen was received really well. Now, when it was launched in 1933, it was called the vacuum filler. So, again, we're not yet being called a Vacumatic. But so we move along to July of 33, and Parker was still not satisfied with the name. And for whatever reason, their marketing team, someone decided to change the name to a more, what they considered more marketable name, Vacumatic. And then once they changed the name, they flooded the market with advertising. And then the Vacumatic name began appearing in late September of 1933. And then really you could just say that the rest from there was history. So there you have it. There's most of the history of, or at least the early history of Vacumatic. I know there's a lot more that I could talk about, but we don't probably have enough time in the video. So let's talk a little bit about this pen and some of the design aspects with this pen specifically. And I'm going to start at actually the top of the pen. So the first thing you notice with this pen is that you've got a black jewel up here, which is very common with a lot of Parker pens. You'll also notice that this pen does not have what a lot of you may have seen as the gold trim. It actually has the silver or chrome trim. Now, this color pattern is the silver pearl color pattern. So typically this would be the color that you would have on the trim to go along with the barrel and cap colors. Now, the other thing you notice, so Parker, when they launched their pen, the first clip was called the Art Deco Arrow Clip or Golden Arrow. And then they went to a split arrow clip that, if I remember correctly, had the Parker written vertically between the two halves. Now this clip, while it does have the Parker written, if you look up at the top, it has a star. Now this clip would be called the Star Clip. So in about 1938, I think it was middle to late 38, Parker had started offering these star clips. And the reason for that is they were actually trying to compete with Schaefer's white dot that denoted their lifetime warranty. So Parker added the star to the split arrow clip to identify pens that had or bore a lifetime warranty. Now, the design actually only lasted for a few months because, as most of you know, they went to the blue diamond clip next, and then and so forth. So the blue diamond actually then started to tell the purchaser that this pen was a lifetime guarantee. Now, this pen I have dated. From what I can tell, it is the second quarter of 1938. So that would make sense. It would be around that time frame. So, this is I don't see a lot of these clips. I wouldn't say this is extremely rare, but obviously they did not make a lot of these pens for a long period of time with this type of clip design. So it wasn't an extremely popular clip design. The clip itself, as most Parker pens, or Vacumatics anyways, is somewhat stiff, but is definitely functional. The pen goes in and out of pockets perfectly fine and works well. Moving down the pen, you'll see that we've got a somewhat thicker band, just a basic chrome silver trim down here. And then working our way down the barrel, see if you can see, if I can get it to focus. You can see Parker Vacumatic, made in USA. And then you might, if I can get it to focus, see some of that date code. So you have .0. And I, of course, went on Richard Bender's website and looked at the date coding system. And from what I could tell, that made it the second quarter of 1938. Now, with something obviously that was very common with most pens of this era is that they were made in a variety of sizes. So Parker was no exception. They had the oversized, they had the senior maxima, as they call it, the major, the standard, the junior, and they even had a debutante and a sub-debutante. Just so many different sizes. Now, one thing you may notice about this pen, and I'll give you a comparison for it, is that it looks probably a little bit smaller. So I'll get out a standard here, and you can definitely see, or this is a junior, I'm sorry. You can definitely see that the pen is much smaller than that blue pearl. And so this, from what I can tell from the sizing, would be a debutante model. So for instance, the pen capped is about 4.75 inches. Uncapped, it's only about 4.3 inches. And then posted, it does get up to a 5.5 inches because it doesn't really post very deeply. Now, with that being said, this is definitely a pen that makes a really nice pocket pen. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about it. Not only is it a pen that's striking in person and an attractive looking pen, but it makes for a nice pocket pen. Now here's a Parker Parker Duofold that is also a debutante. And you can tell that this pen is just slightly larger than that one there. So again, just to give you kind of another sizing comparison as well. Now, as far as the way that this pen fills, as far as the filling mechanism. So as you work your way down the barrel, number one, you notice that this is a double jeweled pen, whereas my other Vacumatic I pulled out earlier is not, which is common for wartime or post-war Vacumatics. This one, if you pull off this blind cap and unscrew it, you'll notice here is your plunger mechanism. Now, they made these with different plungers. So you had your lockdown filler was your first original filling device. And then you had your next one was your speedline filler, which would actually be this one. So there, with your lockdown fillers, you had a shorter blind cap, obviously, with your speedline, because this filling mechanism doesn't actually physically lock down. It's going to retract outwards. You need a longer blind cap. Same thing with this one. Now, the other thing with that being said is kind of some of the reasons why they changed that was that they were wanting to allow greater ink capacity, because when you had your lockdown filler, that meant that the diaphragm was being pushed down, so you're losing some ink capacity that way. With this speedline filler, you're getting a greater ink capacity due to the fact that it is sitting on the outside of the pen, so to speak. Now, they still produced, they started producing the speedline fillers. If I'm not mistaken, they started producing them actually around 1938. But they did produce some lockdown filling mechanisms until like 1939. So they were producing some of them at the same time. So if you get a pen that's dated in like 39 and it has a lockdown mechanism and you're confused why that is, it's because they were still producing them at the same time. I know I watched a video review of a YouTuber that had a Parker Vacumatic that was a Canadian one that I think was from 1939. So again, they were still producing those at the same time. Now, the other cool thing about the silver pearl is that this is the only color that was produced throughout the full lifetime of the Parker Vacumatic series. So When they launched in 1933, the silver pearl was available at the time, along with like the burgundy and burgundy pearl colors and other colors, of course. And then it stayed through all the way till 1948 when the pen line was basically discontinued. So I thought that was another interesting thing, that this was a color that was through the entire life of the pens. And then again, you know, Parker offered a wide array of colors. I've got a couple different colors. I've got a golden pearl, the blue pearl. You saw the Parker Duofold that I have over there was a striped color that's still a Vacumatic or vacuum filler. And there was a wide range of colors. They had them from an emerald green to a blue again, a gold, a silver, a burgundy. They had a gray, a brown. They had their shadow waves. I mean, there are so many different colors available out there. To me, there's a color out there for just about everybody. So I think that's another cool thing about the Parker Vacumatics that I haven't mentioned. Now, taking off the cap reveals that nib. And so this is going to be your arrow nib. I've got some ink that got on my nib, I think when I was moving my pens around earlier. So this reveals our Parker arrow nib. Now this nib is definitely a fine point. It's not my favorite nib. Now it is a very consistent writer. It writes a nice wet line, but it's a little finer than I like. It's much finer than my other Parker nibs. You see your standard Parker feed on the back. It of course has a very small section. I mean very, very tiny section. This is a pen that I can use unposted, and generally unless I'm doing a really long writing session, I will use it unposted. This pen generally is not a pen that I use for long writing sessions. I generally use it to take notes. It's a good pen to take to work to do so. So a pen that I enjoy using quite a bit for that fact. Fits in the pocket well. Really, that's all I can say about it. I hope you guys enjoy this pen. I will review my other Vacumatics at some point. This one, as I said before, it was in really, really poor condition when I got it. And it cleaned up pretty nicely. You'll notice that the blank cap doesn't really fit. It's not really lined up properly. It was like that when I got it. It makes me wonder, it could be a couple different reasons, that there could have been, something could have damaged this at one point. It could be that the collar was not set in there properly. Now, when I took this apart, I made sure that I had everything lined up properly. I haven't had any issues with it. It's been inked up several times. Or it could just be that this blank cap possibly is not original to the pen. It could have been damaged. There's no telling. It actually has a dent back here on the jewel. Of course, now I can't find it. You can barely see it, but there's a dent. So, like I said, the pen was not treated very nicely. But it's still a cool pen, and I really enjoy using it. So up next, guys, is going to be the writing sample, and then we'll finish up from there. I'll be back in a moment. Alright, guys, I am back, and we'll get this writing sample started. So, as I said before, as we all know, this is the Parker Vacumatic. And this is the Silver Pearl. And I would definitely say this is a fine nib. And it's weapon grade stiff, so it's not something we're going to be getting line variation out of at all, for that matter. But even for a fine nib, it writes well. gosh, if I could write. And you guys probably hear some of that feedback, so it definitely gives some feedback and stuff. You know, again, line variation, you know, you can get a little bit, but I mean, you can definitely, it's not springy at all. It's not like using a Waterman's nib or anything like that. So it's not a springy nib by any means whatsoever. As far as wetness, again, it's a fine nib, not extremely wet writer, but it's a consistent writer, like most Parker pens. I mean, I have very, very few Parker nibs. That's one thing. As far as Parker vintage especially, the nibs are just consistent. I mean, I've had a couple of Vacumatics that I got relatively cheap that I knew were going to need some work. And the Golden Pearl that I have, for instance, when I got it, I mean, the nib was black. I mean, I was so worried when I got it. I'm like, man, I hope I don't have to replace this nib. And it's actually my favorite writer. So these nibs they just write really well. And that's one of the things, if I could pick about Vacumatics, aesthetics aside, is I really, really enjoy the nibs quite a bit. Can't really say anything bad about this pen. It's a vintage pen. It's never going to be perfect, but it's a pen that I enjoy using a lot. Again, it's smaller, but it's a cool pen. It's great for just on the go, doing different things with. I don't have issues with it leaking or anything like that. It just does the job, as most Parker pens do. Guys, again, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think. If you've got some Vacumatics, tell us what colors you might have. Tell us a little bit about the history of your pen and stuff that you know about it anyways. If you enjoyed the video, definitely, again, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I'll be putting out more videos. The next couple of videos I'm going to do are going to be more modern pens. And then I'll probably jump back to some vintage stuff. If you guys have anything that you can think of, let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.